Good evening. Very often, passengers and drivers of vehicles develop pain and ache of the neck, back, shoulder, or elbow. Sometimes it persists for a long time. They come to us, the physio, for treatment. And this kind of pain developed after traveling is preventable. It is preventable. Hence, we are here offering you ergonomic tips as to how to sit as a driver, as a passenger, be it a motor vehicle or a flight, long haul flight.
So good evening, everyone. Today's session on the driving portion, I'm going to address on primarily the two-wheeler aspects and some of the exercise solutions for them. So what can happen when you have a particular posture for a long time in terms of driving? So whether it's a two-wheeler or four-wheeler, now there are possibilities that you can, so you can develop a lot of muscles which can go weak and tight. So hamstring muscle is one, you can develop that. The gluteal muscle, the muscle which we sit on, can switch off because of being constantly loaded with the upper body on that. You can develop IT tightness. So IT is a muscle, you can see that that's coming on the sides, which can develop tightness. You can have a stiff back of long sitting. Your shoulder muscles can get tense because of how you hold your steering or the handle and how much you twist and turns you have to do. People also tend to develop the upper trap muscles. That's your muscle that's connecting the shoulder to the neck, which can become very tensed and cause pain. And the eye muscles. The eye also has smaller muscles which has to constantly be open when you drive and when you're doing long drives and all those things, how it adapts to the light. So those are very important things. Now, biking, apart from the regular commute, it can also be as a passionate one. We have lots of bikers club. We have the Royal Enfield or the Harley Davidson or various local clubs where people do long drives on their bikes. So the tips what I'm going to give is the travel with two-wheeler is necessity these days for a lot of the people where they need to commute to work or from there. So I'm going to just explain few things with two different models. One is a bike, which is a little bit more of a two-wheeler one. A lot of the people use, and the ladies use them for their regular work, to travel to work or to shop or to bring the kids back from school, dropping them, carrying objects in them. So we do a lot of work with this and we adapt our body in a different way. So we have this model who's standing in. So the primary things which you need to know is the hip, knee and the foot angle, how they are placed. And if you can seeing on this particular image, his foot is not completely planted. He has to be on his toes, so his weight is going down and he has to balance only with his toes. So ideally for him to sit slightly in front will allow him to place his foot completely, so that will give him a better weight distribution. Now if he is going to be on his toes, his calf muscles are the ones that is going to be very tight because it has to overwork. And if you look at the upper limb, the elbow position on a L 90 degree is a better option. And if you sit more straighter, then you tend to put more tension on the shoulders and the upper trapezius muscle, as I mentioned earlier. So this is not a good posture to try and maintain to sit on the two-wheeler. Now we have another person who's little taller than him, and you see that the same position when he sits, he's got a perfect elbow position, and his foot is perfectly placed down and equally distributing the weight, so he can handle the vehicle. Now this is something common we see a lot of the people doing, where they transport a lot of the things. So when they do that, they have additional weight, because of which they have to work on their shoulders to manage that weight. So those are the things which puts extra load on the shoulder muscles. Now, taking the sports bike, so if you can see this person in the earlier one, again his foot was not planted, and if you see in this image, he's almost perpendicularly standing rather than sitting. So his hip, knee and foot angle, if you see, it's more. So this tends to put direct load going on in, and he will always be at risk when there is an off balance or whenever he has to stop the vehicle, that he has to be very careful, and he can miss out to get an injury. So this is from the front view. You can see that how he is on his literally on his 4 foot, the great toe, and this is where the entire weight is shifting. Whereas the second person, when he sits on the sports bike, you can see that he's more sitting, and he's got a better angle on the hip and knee, and he is better placed. So if you see that the two persons, when they choose their vehicle of drive, the weight distribution that passes through the muscles is different depending upon their sizes. Now, a lady using them, and you can see in this one particularly very clearly that how she is placed with her foot down, and she is not on the appropriate vehicle. And we can see a lot of the time people try to use a heel or a higher footwear so that they can just put them foot down and get their balance. So I'm just going to suggest some simple stretches which you can do for a daily commute. So as soon as you drive your vehicle, you get down, you can just do a quadricep stretch, which is good for your hip and the thigh muscle. When you sit all day long in your two-wheeler, that's just for your hip, where you tend to sit and your hip can get a little more stiffer. And you can also do a hamstring stretch. Remember, in two-wheeler, I said that you can't have in long drives, even on four-wheeler, you can get. You just get down, just get a good stretch on the hams. And these are again for the car. You can just get down, get the quad stretched. The calf stretch is you just need to work on this is the stretch of the back leg, where you can just get a nice stretch. And all the stretches, try to hold it for about 20 counts. And you can also do another modified version of the calf stretch. A shoulder stretch is also good enough to stretch the pec muscles here and all the way the biceps and the forearm for all the day we are going to sit. Now, these are some of the stretches. Again, you can do, like if you're going to do a long commute in the day, you can do some modified way, or once in a week you try and do them. So I'm using a stretch board here. The same calf stretch what I earlier showed you. So the back leg is the leg that is going to get stretched. So use your body weight, keep your body upright and get the forces going. This is in line. Use a rope or a belt or a cloth. You're going to nice pull down. So you get a nice stretch along the posterior kinetic chain. So you can have the stretch coming on the calf, the fascia and the hamstrings. And you can do a variation to get stretches on the lateral side. So you're going to pull towards you and then move it towards the sides. You can see the direction of moving on to the other sides. And this is again another active lengthening of the hamstring. So these are some of the simple stretches you can perform on a regular basis. And if you are a person who do long drives, then you can add up little more stretches after your long drive. So you are traveling from one city to another city. So remember the gluteal switch off I said. So this is just trying to squeeze your glute muscle and trying to open up the hip. So allow the hip to get some mobility. Rotation lying down and rotate the hip alone and lie down sideways and move the hip and moving the hip in and out. So these are hips. And then you can stretch your low back, going on to a sitting to Namaste position, and then again going on to the side direction, standing side bends, rotation into oblique direction. Again, this is complete rotation. This is bending forward and going back. So that will be your front mobility exercises. And again in the legs, as earlier shown on these exercises, these will be the shoulder stretches, the pec and the shoulder blade stretch. So these are the exercises, and these are the exercises for the neck and the elbow. That will be your side muscle, upper trapezius, what I had earlier mentioned. So these are your exercises, what can be done. So thank you very much.
Tips for various kinds of travelers. So why we wanted this talk is because of these few factors which I would like to show. As you can see, the number of deaths because of traffic accidents is quite high, which we all know. But how much is the question? As per the statistics in 2017, there were 4 deaths every hour just because of not wearing a helmet because of road traffic accident. And Tamil Nadu has the maximum number. So this number amounts to around 50,000 deaths just because of the two-wheeler accidents. So what does this mean? 50,000 means how much? It's about 98, about 100 die every day in 1 year just because lack of helmets. So what's the amount we are looking at? So we are talking about corona so much nowadays. So we are talking about the daily death of around approximate 500 now during this lockdown. This is during the maximum apex of this pandemic where the curve is high. So it's about 500 deaths. And this pandemic is going to last for 3 years. But the death per day is currently, this is yesterday's stats, which is 25,000 per day. Uh, so, so if you compare with the deaths of corona, it's 5 times the death of RTA. But the accident deaths is throughout the year over so many years. There's a question that why we are not giving so much importance to what we are given to corona. Corona is going to stay only for a year, and it's going to surge, and it's going to affect majority elderly population. But on the contrary, the young and the healthy who are the breadwinners are the ones which are lost in road traffic accidents. So our media and we as such are not giving as much importance to road traffic accidents and helmets as much we must give to corona and masks. So more than masks, I'm not saying masks should not be worn, but more as much of importance we are giving to masks now, the same amount of importance should be given to helmets. So that's what was the reason we thought of this topic. Then few points to add on safety while driving, as well as few points to avoid back pain and knee pain, and people who already have back pain and knee pain, how to travel. Those are the tips we want to share today. So helmets, the helmet on the right is the safest. And if not, at least this, or the last one in the left, at least this if for not wearing a helmet. But the best is on the right. So when you choose your helmet, make sure your straps are tight, and you need to do a rollover test where the helmet doesn't roll in front or back, and the straps must always be worn tightly. No point in wearing a helmet which flies away when you go over a bump. So many of the two-wheelers do wear the helmet only in front of the signal or when the police is there, then take it off and put it back. That's not the way of wearing the helmet. We in orthopedics have seen so many injuries and so many deaths just because they have not worn a helmet. A lot of people have been saved, the helmets have cracked, they have had a lot of injuries, but no head injuries, so they recover back to their normal sense. But if they do have a head injury, they're not going to be back to their normal previous status. So wear helmets and encourage everyone to wear helmets is one more point. And regarding potholes and how to avoid back potholes. When you see a pothole quite far away, you can sway around it and go around. But in India, where potholes are just not this way, it's going to be this way. It's not easy to go around a pothole. You need to go through the pothole, and there'll be so many vehicles which are coming behind you, so you cannot go to your right, and somebody might hit you behind. So the best way is to go through the pothole, reduce the speed, and try to stand up on the footrest slightly, not so much, slightly your seat away from your seat, so that the jerk is not transmitted straight to your spine. Your knees and ankles and hips take the jerk along with the suspension of the vehicle, and you will be able to avoid back pain when you travel on bad roads. At the same time, if you are a person who has already an issue with backaches, when you choose your bike, make sure you choose your bike which your footrest is in line with your body. In such bikes where the footrest is far in front, you will not be able to raise yourself higher. So if you have the back issue, do not choose for such vehicles. But your sportswear bikes, you can raise yourself up when you go across a pothole or a bad road. But on long rides in the sports bike, if you see a back position, it's not straight. It's always in an inclined position. This on a long drive over a bad road, it's again not going to help. So ideally for people who have issues with backache, straight sitting posture bike with the legs almost closer to the line of your spine is the best I would advise. And how to go across a pothole safely. If you can see in the racing bikes, when you decelerate, when you brake, the front suspension goes in because of the effect of inertia. So when you go across a pothole, if you're slowing down, you make sure you let go of the brakes before you hit the pothole, so that your suspension can work. Let go of your brakes before you hit it, so that your suspension comes back normal and it can take the impact and the jerk is not transmitted onto you more. And going across without braking across a gravel and unstable road keeps the vehicle more steady, which is safer. And the other point which I would say is the size of the wheels. We see so many bikes or more scooters with small wheels. So try to go for slightly larger wheels whenever possible when you're choosing your two-wheeler. So when you're traveling in a bus, so if you have backache, which position to choose? So when you were traveling overnight or more than 3 hours, if you're booking a seat, make sure you don't book the seat far in the back and far in the front. Because of this effect, the last seat and the first seat do bump a lot when it goes across a speed breaker, or you would have noticed it. So if you already have a back pain, you would increase your back issues because of the amount of jerk which is there. So choose a seat somewhere in between the wheels so that the jerk is least. Again, when you're traveling in a vehicle, to avoid motion sickness, stay to choose a seat somewhere in between the wheels. Higher the vehicle, more motion sickness you would have. Try to avoid reading, try to avoid watching mobile. If you do have a motion sickness have an habit of taking a pill before you ride. And try to avoid sitting backwards, try to face the road which you're riding. And regarding knee pain issues, when you see a lot of old people trying to climb up the train like this or go up the bus like this. So we come across a lot of people come to us with meniscus tears and osteoarthritis increases after such episodes of trying to go up, especially more than going up, coming down the bus, especially the last step where it is quite high. They do have a tendency to injure the knee further. So the tip is to always use the side rail and try to use your upper limbs and aid the knee muscles to decrease the load on the knee. When there is a very high step, use both sides rails. If you can have some kind of a step or a bag, try to use the bag to step over it. Coming down, try to come down straight rather than twisting and coming down. That's a thing. And when you go up the bus, the olden day buses, as you can see, the first step is so high, which is not ideal for an elderly. The newer buses have, if you can notice, the first step is slightly lower in these buses, which makes things easier. And the more recent Sogusu Perundu is much better, because the more cost, it has more technology, which actually lowers the outer side of the bus. When it stops near the bus stand, it has a capacity to lower down so that you can get in easily. So sensibly choose the bus if you already have knee issues, if it's possible to choose a bus which you can travel. And elderly, when you're traveling in the car, getting in and getting out, again, when you choose a higher vehicle, too high, it will be a problem. Too low sedans, again, it might be a problem. Try to use the handles and supports. There are some extra fittings which are available, which will help you to get off and get in. Really elderly who has difficulty, the way you get in must be sitting backwards and then turning. Such swivel discs are available. If you have advanced knee issues, you can choose them to independently get in and get out. So these issues might help you not to worsen your knee issues. And as a last point, I would like to show this picture. I hope all of you can pick up the numbers 25, 6, 45. This is called Ishihara chart. This is to pick up color blindness. If this is the image in the left, let's see whether you can pick up the number over here. This is a poll question. All audiences can participate in the poll. So can you please go ahead and choose the number which is seen here. Is it possible to see any number, or there is no number? Let's see how many of you get it right. Please go ahead and vote for it. I'll give you 10 seconds.
Yeah, B 74, 10%.
Yeah.
There's no number at all, 30%. And C 21, 40%. And number 8, 20%.
Okay, so it's so varied. So color blindness is actually present in about 10% of our individuals, which people might not be aware, but nothing wrong in having color blindness. All of you, if you can see this again, the picture which is smaller over here, can you pick up the number again? Can you give to, this is 21 actually, if you can pick it up again. So don't worry, this is a difficult form of Ishihara chart. So for you to really know whether you have issues with certain colors, you can go and test your color with this chart which is available online and know if you're really blind to any specific colors. So why did we talk about color blindness? So picking up the colors in the signal is very important. For a person who is totally color blind, you will be picking it up like this. But with this, it's not an issue. With the position of the light, you can still pick up the signals, and with the newer LEDs where it has symbols, you can still pick it up. But you can still, ideally, older rules said you cannot have a driving license, but there are amendments which colorblind people can still get license with the newer rules. So going on to further tips and polls, this is another poll question. So talking about which is the ideal seat height while you drive. If you can see here, this is the position which you were able to see the ground, the road, and this is the seating height. This is your eye level. So there are three options here, A, B, and C. So poll for all of our audience. So time to vote, and you need to tell us which is the ideal seat height. 50% have chosen 50. I was also among the 50, but let's see what's the correct question from Prithvin. Over to you, Prithvin.
So one of the biggest advantages of having clear vision is that you don't have neck pain when you go on a long drive, so that you make sure you're not sitting too high and try to look down, or if you're sitting too low and craning your neck up to try and see what's coming up ahead.
Yeah, initially I also thought that more you see closer to the road, it's better. But as Prithvin said, the further ahead center of vision is there, it's better. So the option 2 is much better regarding the height. Prithvin, what about the headrest? What should be the position of the headrest?
Okay, so the headrest typically has to be at the nape of the neck. So the headrest is there to save you from whiplash injury. A lot of people you can see in Indian roads, they remove the headrest so that the person sitting behind can communicate with the driver. But you should leave it on at all times, because if you have an impact, you go forward and typically you come back. That's whiplash injury. So this will prevent you from damaging your neck. I would suggest that you leave the headrest on. The headrest is built into the seat in such a way that it does not move forward or back. It can go up or down. Some of the luxury cars have the option where it can come a little bit forward, but best is not to remove it.
So while you're driving, you don't have to touch the headrest with your head.
No.
That doesn't happen, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't need to. It's not a headrest. It's a head restraint.
This is about the seat belt position. At the first look, everything looks the same. But have a closer look at the points near the shoulder. Look at the waist belt position and choose which is the ideal belt position. So 60% have chosen A and 80% B and 20% C. Okay, let's see which is the right position. Go to you. 60% have chosen right option. But let's see why A is correct.
Okay, so seat belt in all modern day cars can be adjusted according to height. So the most important thing is that your seat belt over here should come across your shoulder and then across your chest, and the lap belt should be on the lap. If you see position C, it's much lower, it's over here. So it shouldn't be over here, it has to be on the shoulder. At the same time, it shouldn't be too high, where it's on your neck. So the seat is adjustable and the seat belt is adjustable. So make sure that it fits nice and snug over the shoulder. Because the seat belt pull you back into the seat with a lot of force during an impact or an accident. So if it's at your neck level or if it's over here at your shoulder, it will do more damage than saving you.
So, Pritchard, suppose if somebody has a belly or a pregnant lady, what to be done? That the lap belt, what to do? So in such.
Okay. So basically the lap belt has to be on the lap. So make sure that it's not sitting on the stomach, especially if you have a pregnant lady. You should make sure that it's below the tummy and on the lap. Because in case of impact, it should save you. And if it's on the stomach, it's going to crush your stomach. So option C is the best. You have to have both hands on the steering wheel at all times. So you have to have, if you look at the steering over here, you have to make sure that you have both hands on the steering wheel at the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock position. So if you look at the slide, the image shows you're holding it here over here. That's not correct. You have to hold it here for the simple reason, if you hold it here, you're not going to have control of the car. And two, in case of an impact, the airbag is going to open, it's going to hit your hands. So you have to have have both your hands on the 9 o'clock and 3 o'clock position.
How do you turn? Because I've seen some lorry drivers and taxi drivers crossing the hand and turning, and they think it is very fashionable. So what do you think is the right thing to do?
So I'll show you the right way to turn the steering wheel. I commonly joke that most of our Indians were road roller drivers in the previous generation because they keep the hand typically like this and they turn. This is wrong. So the best way to turn the steering wheel is, for example, you're turning to the left 180 degrees. You don't need to take your hands off the steering wheel. You have both hands on the steering wheel and you bring it back straight. And if you need to do a full circle on the steering wheel, for example, over here, you take your innermost hand off. If I'm turning left, I take my innermost hand off, put it back on the same place on the steering wheel and come back. And then when I need to straighten out the steering wheel, I do the same technique. This ensures that I have both hands on the steering wheel, so I have control at all times. And another important thing, when you're turning to the left, it's your right hand that has to do the pushing motion. It shouldn't be a pulling. It shouldn't be a pulling or a snatching motion. You have to push into it. So when you turn right, you take your innermost hand off and put it back on the same place on the steering wheel. And another important, if you can show my elbows over here. Now, if you can go back, so a lot of people sit like this. They have the arms fully outstretched or they have it over here. So you have to have a bend in the elbow. If you look over here, you have to have a bend in the elbow. The main reason is so that your shoulders don't get fatigued when you're driving. So that when you keep turning, if you have imagine you keep your arms outstretched and you keep turning left and right, your shoulders is going to hurt in no time. Both of them, so the bend in the elbow and you have space for the thumb on the steering wheel and you.
So when you do a long distance, if you have it on cruise mode, can you rest the arms or sides comfortably?
I think in terms of safety and for your own, so that you don't get any aches and pains, the best is always to have both hands on the steering wheel, because very often you have the center rest here and you start leaning on it, and when you start leaning on it, your neck starts hurting and your driving also gets compromised. You start steering more to the left. So it's always good to not rest your hands, which is quite a common thing that we see in our Indian road.
How do I avoid leg cramps while doing long distance driving?
So one of the most important things that I like to follow and I try to follow when I'm doing a long distance drive is that I make sure that I take frequent breaks. Every 2 hours, get down, stretch my legs, because in the car you're in a confined space. You can do your neck, you can turn left, you can turn right, you can probably stretch your arms, but with your legs, you have a very confined space. So I'd always suggest every 2 hours or 3 hours, get down, do a quick stretch, keep hydrated, drink enough of salts, and you should be fine.
Which is the correct foot position on the pedals. So there are 4 options. Okay. Option B, 64% have chosen the second option. I think that's the right option. Richard, what about the barefoot rowing, Mimit?
I would suggest use footwear which has thin sole. You can see the shoe that I'm wearing has got a very thin sole, so the feedback is quite good. If a lot of women, if they wear high heels, or men, if they wear thick boots, they feel the sensitivity isn't all that great, so they remove it. If you're going to drive barefoot, just make sure you don't leave your footwear in the footwell. Keep it on the left, in the passenger side, so that it doesn't obstruct the pedals in case you need to come to a stop, to a sudden stop. And just make sure that the footwear that you use is not too wide. It has to be a good fit shoe. Your feet shouldn't be floating in the shoe, or it shouldn't be too wide, wherein you're pressing pedals unintentionally.
Just one thing struck my mind. I've seen a few videos where the floor mat going and getting stuck in the accelerator and causing accidents. Was that a fake thing, or it does happen? Should we be careful of something like that?
It does happen. It's happened to me, in fact. Most of the modern day cars now, for the floor mat, they have anchors all around at the 4 corners to ensure that it doesn't slip. So for an automatic car, in most automatic cars, you have something known as a dead uh, dead pedal. So if you look at the over here, usually where the clutch is on the extreme left, there's something known as a dead pedal or a rest pedal. So you can keep your left leg resting. In automatic cars, you use only a right leg for accelerator and for brake. So you basically rest your left leg. Even in a manual car, make sure you don't rest your left leg on the clutch.
And regarding the play of the clutch, is it better to leave some play and have a clutch, or it should be with the starting itself?
You have to have a little bit of play. Only then your gears going to engage properly, and you can start moving smoothly.
So we'll move on to the next question, which is exactly something about that driving position, about the seat and the backrest. So 3 options: A, B, and C. On the first look, all 3 might look the same. Do look at the points in the shoulder, where the shoulder is, and see what's the knee position, and see what's the hip position, elbow position, and choose which you think is the ideal position. So 25% have chosen A, 38% B, and 38% C. So it's a match. We are really not sure which is the right one. Ritwin?
Okay, so the right posture is option C, and let me answer the question of Mr. Ram. So the backrest should be ideally at about 70-80 degrees. It shouldn't be too upright where you're falling over the steering wheel, or it shouldn't be too reclined where you're resting and you feel like you're going to fall asleep. So it has to be nice and snug to your back, give you good spine support. So if you look at the position here, it's about 70 to 80 degrees. So that way it's comfortable. It keeps my back muscles in good shape. I don't feel too much of pain. And let me explain why option C. So I'll just recap quickly and I'll add a few more points. So if you see the seat height over here, I can see much further ahead. I can see through the windscreen. I'm not looking at the dashboard or at the roof. You know, a lot of kids, they look at Formula One and they put the seat all the way down, and sometimes you wonder who's driving the car. But they have bragging rights. You know, they can say, "Oh, I crashed the car at 140." What are you doing looking at the speedometer? Because you're sitting too low, you have to sit so that you have clear vision through the windscreen and you can see much further ahead and you can anticipate. And both hands on the steering wheel at the 9 o'clock, 3 o'clock position. You have to have a bend in the elbow so that your shoulders and elbow doesn't get fatigued. Your backrest should be at about 70 degrees so that it's keeping nice and comfortable. At the same time, it's keeping you alert. And your pedal position is very important. Your leg has to be in alignment with the accelerator, because that's the majority of use. You're going to be accelerating and your right leg is going to be used. So, and make sure that your seat belt is nice, snug over the shoulder. You can adjust it depending on your height. And if you look at my leg over here, there's a bend in my knee as well. it's not fully outstretched. You'll see a lot of people sitting behind and fully outstretched. If you're fully outstretched, you're not going to be able to reach the brake pedal in time and press the brake with enough force to get the ABS activated. So make sure you have a bend in the knee and a bend in the elbow as well.
Between, what about short people who have a short trunk, especially females, who cannot really see because of their height when they want to drive an SUV? Can they use a pillow to raise their level up? What's your take on that?
I wouldn't advise using a pillow because a pillow is a free moving object. You're sitting on it, and in case if you break because of inertia, you're going to be sliding, and it's going to do a lot of damage to the person who's driving. I don't think people who are not that tall should worry anymore because I see so many of my friends, even who are women and men who are not so tall, they still drive SUVs because vehicles nowadays have so much of adjustment capability. They can move, go up, the seat can go up, down, recline, make sure that the thigh support is good, and you can reach the pedal. The steering wheel, if you look over here, the steering wheel can go in or out. So if you're not so tall, you can pull the steering wheel out, you can move the seat forward, and I don't think you should worry about people who are not so tall not being able to drive an SUV.
So you're saying that as soon as you sit on the seat, you spend a few seconds adjusting various things, including your rear view mirror and everything, right? Which often I've seen people don't do that at all. And they must get into the habit of doing it. Check 1, 2, 3, 4, and then only start the car. In fact, when you take a British driving license, when you go on a check, and whether even if everything is on a check, you have to spend a few seconds to show to the guy as if you're doing all that. If you don't do that, it's simply failure.
I completely agree with you, and it's always good, especially if you're driving another person's car or if even in your own car. Make sure that your seat is adjusted, your recline position is adjusted, your mirrors, your rear view mirror. That way, it's safer. And if you follow all these tips that I taught you, your driving is going to be more pleasurable.
Prithvi, what about the mats, these acupuncture mats, beaded mats which give you comfort?
I've not used them. I'm sure you can use them when you're not driving.
Suggestions on prevention of cramps, Santosh.
Cramps are multiple causes. First thing is dehydration. Next is deficiency of vitamins and minerals. So you should make sure those are in the right place. You drink plenty of water. Long drives, dehydration can result in those. And women during their menstrual phase do have cramps. Those are the primary causes. At least approximately every couple of hours, get out of the vehicle, stretch yourself before you go on a longer journey. If you're on a passenger seat, you can keep moving your feet and do your stretches in the bus or train. Try to get up to keep moving around in the train or the flight. While driving, you need to stop and get out and get in.
Thank you very much for attending this. Until we meet next Saturday, keep safe, keep the distance, and keep healthy. Thank you.